And in just a minute, let's see if everybody, yeah. Okay, so in just a moment, Brenda Marcus, our festival chair, has a few words to share with you before we introduce our wonderful guest speaker. Brenda?
Okay, hi everyone. I just wanted to thank you all for your participation. I wanted to thank the sponsors and Joe Goyen and Rochelle and Adina for all their hard work. I know we've had problems with some of the platforms and they've been working very hard at it, but these things will happen, and thank you for your patience. And I really, really hope that next year we'll be in the theater so we can see you all again. Thank you so much. And here's Rochelle again.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're really lucky to have Mark Kreditor in our community and with us this evening. In addition to his family and community service, Mark Kreditor has a passion for music and comedy. And we see this played out throughout the community. He's educated and entertained, I'll call it edutained, many students in our Florence Melton School at the JCC and elsewhere in the DFW community and beyond. And he was the perfect person to bring to help us unpack Douze Points, which is a comedy thriller and satire film. You know, Mark's going to share insights. He's going to tell us a little bit about this unique music festival in Europe that, you know, is somewhat foreign to Americans. And he'll be taking questions through the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself to ask a question, Mark doesn't mind being interrupted. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Mark. And thank you all for being with us, and stay tuned for more film opportunities coming up. Our festival is over. Our festival is over for 2021, but we'll be putting forth films occasionally, and so watch your email boxes.
Thank you, and welcome everybody this evening to what I hope is a defined departure from what our lives have been like for so many, many, many months. This film is absolutely about nothing serious whatsoever. And as much as I tried the first time I watched it and the second time I watched it to really think that there was some message that perhaps I was going to absorb from this, I continued to be reminded of all of the films that our family, I come from all these people who are funny, my father, my kids, we all have shticks from movies, like the America movie coming up with Eddie Murphy. Like, I think of all these lines in Princess Bride, we have all these lines. Well, I bet in Israel, they have all these lines about Douze Points. So I want to first give you a little background about the people who created this film and perhaps why. And then I want you to think about an answer to the following question, and I will pause and you can unmute and scream one out. But what film perhaps you have seen that is not Israeli, but an American film, it most reminded you of in terms of style? And I hope that some of you will answer the one that I have in my head. But let me tell you a little bit about this movie. The first part of my story has to do with a mission that I went on with our federation a number of years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And the high point of the mission was to meet the Eurovision winner, who was not only an Israeli, but a beautiful Ethiopian young lady who met and visited all of us at our tables and sang for us, of course. And it was then I realized that in Israel, as in throughout Europe, they have their version of the American Idol or The Voice, as our family watches on a regular basis. It's just sometimes repackaged, and certainly in Israel. So that was the whole Michigas connection of this Eurovision. But the story gets even more ridiculous. So as I say, I watched the film 2 times and I got much more out of it the second time because I took notes and I paused it and wrote down some of the lines that I'll share with you. The word douze, for those of you who know a little bit of French, I believe means 12. And in the case of how this is compared in Eurovision or any contest, to get 12 points is like getting a perfect score or getting a high score. And if you can remember, part of the Michigas was that the terrorists were manipulating the points so that the star TJ was able to be the winner, even though he was, in the certain opinion of Claude, the voice coach, useless, worthless, and was going to come in 25th place. And if you remember Claude, he had the greatest frames for glasses. And I really wish the guy would just share with me whose brand of frames he was wearing, because they were gorgeous. There was a lot of great fashion in this movie. So 12 points, 12 points. It was originally done as a 3-part 2019 Israeli TV series that I believe they put the 3 episodes together and made it into a film. But here's a great fact. Though it was going to be released in 19, it was probably filmed and written in 16 or 17 by the writer, and it was delayed in its original airing because the actual Eurovision winner from France was a gay Muslim. And they said, look at Israel, look what you're doing. You're putting this movie out. We're going to boycott Eurovision because you're doing this to make fun of a gay Muslim. And quite the opposite was true, because this contestant who was the gay Muslim, Bilal Hassani, was France's actual contestant. The writer of the movie, the writer of this movie actually wrote it years before. His name, the Israeli writer, was Azaf Zelikovich, and he said he wrote the storyline long before gay Muslim French singer contestant Bilal Hassani ever even auditioned for Eurovision. So I'm kind of reminded how Israel is even at fault when they come in after the actual storyline. A little bit about the director. Director Daniel Sirkin was born in Moscow. He immigrated to Israel as a young boy, graduated from the Tel Aviv University School of Cinema. Many of his films have won awards, including he won the equivalent of the Israeli Academy Award for Best Director for his 2006 film called Out of Sight. But I am most connected to this incredible director by a series that you can watch tonight on Apple TV called Tehran. And if any of you have seen Tehran, it's a fantastic, fantastic piece about an Israeli who poses as a Iranian infiltrator and trying to discover nuclear secrets. And it's really a great series. And I watched it with my daughter Rose. But let's talk about the movie. So I asked each of you to think of a description of a type of film or a specific film that perhaps you can compare to in American cinema. The term satire or comedy or farce, all of these descriptions. But before I give you mine, would anybody want to unmute and tell me a movie that perhaps is like this? Yeah, go ahead, Molly. You can just unmute and call it out. You have to unmute first.
Trying it in the wrong place. Okay, the first one that came to my mind was, isn't it called Don't Mess with the Zohar by Adam Sandler?
That's great.
Right?
Don't mess with the
hairdresser.
Yes,
rather than a singer, it's a hairdresser.
And he has the accent, and I think he uses the word hummus a lot. Okay, that was a good one, by the way. Anybody else have a movie that it might have reminded of? Go ahead and mute back, Molly, and we'll let someone else jump in.
Thank you.
Well, you really want me to give it away? I'm going to. In my worst bad British accent, it has. Yes, go ahead, Gary.
I thought Will Ferrell's won his Eurovision contest movie.
Yes, he had. That's right. That was mentioned actually in some of the Wikipedia stuff that Will Ferrell did one on Eurovision. That was also a parody. A lot of the Will Ferrell movies are those type of farce parody type movies that just make fun of every aspect of the script, which I really felt as I said earlier, that there really wasn't a deep message here. It was just making fun of everybody. And I'll give you some specific examples that I found particularly funny in each of the characters. But the one that I really want you to just think about, because it's a very big film series in our household, is Austin Powers. Austin Powers made fun of 007 and the whole parody of everything about him and everybody that he meets is made fun of. Like every aspect of it is, I think about it. And then I thought about Airplane, where almost every single scene in Airplane was the same person who was just funny. Certainly Blazing Saddles and anything Mel Brooks could have done, he would have eaten this up. If you were asking Mel Brooks to do this, it could have been a Mel Brooks film. And I found over and over and over again, every character, when I saw it specifically the second time, they were funny. They were funny. So let's talk about some of the characters. And if anybody wants to unmute and give opinions about them, feel free to. But the star is Tariq, who we call TJ, who was gorgeous. I mean, he really was a very good looking young man. And of course, he played the role of a French gay, and in a minor role, really the Muslim connection you kind of had to really think about, because he didn't really practice his Muslim lifestyle because he was so openly gay, and his fashion, I mean, and his girlfriend, his friends at the bar. And I mean, it was just amazing. He embodies, in my view, the glamour of the French gay scene. And when I saw him in the clubs, I thought even in my youngest day, I could never have kept up with him or fit in, because he just was beautiful in every aspect when he danced and all that. Then we have the opposing character, Russell. And Russell is his partner in this whole farce, who is openly Muslim and clearly in many ways conflicted. If there was any serious tone to this, it is Russell coming out of the closet and recognizing the fact that it was acceptable to be gay and to accept his friend. But when I go beyond these two more serious characters, I have to focus on Duty. Anybody remember who Duty was? The clown, Israeli, who was getting yelled at by his wife with those kids who had a cough that the pediatrician he was punching, he stops and he asks him to put him in front of the freezer, and the cough stops. And it shows, and I love this, that every Jewish husband has a boss, even if they're in the Mossad and they're the killer enforcer. He was so, just taken when he got on the phone with his wife over and over again. I loved his depiction throughout the movie, being so brave, yet so scared to death of his wife. The pediatrician scene where they punched the doctor was hysterical, but I thought the funniest was when they killed the shop owner accidentally after mentioning that the bamba they bought was half the price of what they paid for it in Israel, and the guy had a peanut allergy. That's comedy. That's humor. That's farce. That was really, really funny. And I caught only the second time when they first introduced the whole bamba purchase, because the lines came fast and I'm reading the subtitles, that they were able to buy it for half the price. And then look at Duty's co-workers, and I didn't get their names, but the very beautiful Mossad commander, she was gorgeous. And the affair that she had at the mobile phone convention with the other good-looking blonde guy, that was over and over again part of some of the lines that were reminded of this affair, and how they went back and forth and then they would eventually get together, I thought was very cute. And then if you remember, they had a big boss Mossad guy in Israel that was kind of directing things. And when they finally get to the scene, the high point of the scene where they're going to have to defuse the bomb, the big Mossad guy comes in eating a sandwich. And his best line was, "No harm to the Gentiles or to the genitals." I thought that was a great line, and I had to write that one down. Some other great lines, and then please interrupt me if you would like. But Tariq, Russell's father was the the Macha terrorist. He was the Gadol. Abu Bas Marzak, the father terrorist. He said to his son, when he sends him off to Eurovision with TJ, if your father says you have to be gay for Papa, you'll be gay for Papa. And later, before he was setting the bomb, he says, Papa still needs you gay, my son. Like, I thought the way that, you know, that there isn't anybody in ISIS that talks like this. And there was over and over again, all those ISIS guys standing in front of the television. And at one point, Israel's contestant comes on and there's a huge ovation. And what do we see them all do? They take their shoe off and throw it at the television. And I was reminded of past President Bush, when someone threw the shoe at Bush. It must have been at the time the writer was writing this, because he immediately put that into the script. Another character that I just loved was Zionit. Remember the name, Zionit? She was the very aggressive tour operator that greets them in the lobby. She was so pushy and so big and so friendly. And at one point, when they're all getting nervous about something, she goes, "You're in Israel, not a war zone." I thought that was a great line. And I thought her best physical comedy was when she attacked the Mossad agent and reveals that she's actually with security, that she was the toughest of them all. The women in this movie were the stars. The wife of Dodi, who we never meet, Dudi, and the woman Zionit steals the show in terms of Israeli women being portrayed as clearly wearing the pants in the family. When he goes into the Tel Aviv coffee shop in order to get the bomb and asks for Ahmed, the joke there is there's so many Israeli Arabs working in coffee shops, all named Ahmed. He says, we have a lot of Ahmeds here. And then he says, Ahmed, whose uncle is this one and that one. And I thought that was very funny, that there's plenty of Israelis there. And then, of course, we talk about the contestant. And, you know, the first time round, I didn't know what I was looking at with the Irishman, who they call McFuckboy, but he's really very funny. And this is the most humorous part of his character was when he gets tackled in the stairway because they think he's smuggling a bomb. And what is he smuggling? A soda stream. And that was funny because, again, 3 years ago, we were boycotting SodaStream because it was manufactured in occupied lands till they moved the factory. And he's smuggling SodaStream and getting a great, great line. There was also the nudist singers. Where were they from? Iceland. Claude, the voice coach, easy to hate. Okay, and then at the end, there is the bar scene with the Mossad guy in drag, Dudi wearing the wig, and he really didn't look too appealing, but he obviously, when Russell took the shot, he immediately thought he was not a Muslim because he was taking shots. But in that scene, I thought Dudi did one of the best impersonations of how John Belushi would have played the role. He was big, he filled the room, he was kind of all over the place, but he looked like John Belushi. And when he falls into the filthy Tel Aviv lake after chasing the guy unsuccessfully, the other agent looks at him and he's just disgusting. And he says, the mayor swims in it every day, you know, typically making fun, I'm sure, of something that was very politically connected in the Israeli paper about something that is dirty that the government's telling you is clean. We certainly have it this week with Encore and ERCOT and everything else that's going on in Texas. And those were some of my favorite notes. I'm sure many of you can remind me of others, but I think overall, this was a great way to end a wonderful film festival. I really needed the laugh, and I think that we all love Israel, and we all realize that the Jewish people, when made fun of as members, we're very entertained. You know, I felt like I was almost watching, you know, Joan Rivers, or it was just one thing after another, and it was all very, very funny and meaningless. I didn't take any of it serious. I didn't walk away with it having an opinion about ISIS terrorists or Univision. I just thought it was funny, and I'm glad nobody got hurt. That's the most important thing. Any comments, questions? Just unmute. Yes.
I
Gary?
wanted to say, sorry, Carol, go ahead. No?
Go ahead, Brenda.
I wanted to say how difficult it is every year. It's really crazy lately to find comedies. There was a year when we had 4 or 5 comedies in our festival out of 9. And now I am struggling to find comedies that, that are good. It's unbelievable. Maybe it's the times. I don't know if you've got any ideas, but people say to me, give me a comedy. I say, no, I wish I could.
It's very interesting. Do you think that writers of film, and obviously you are really in this, consider themselves less than if they're Mel Brooks than if they're writing stuff like I just finished this incredible series, I think it was on HBO Max, called Alice. And it's about a film writer and a director, and the husband's the star actor. And this was serious stuff. There was nothing funny, and it was really high quality Israeli film. I watch almost everything that's on television that's Israeli, and you're absolutely right. I can't remember the last time I watched an Israeli comedy other than, Shtissel's coming out and some of the others. Gary, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was curious the number of people who are, in our Zoom meeting have actually seen the Eurovision Song Contest.
Got a couple of yeses. Anita's seen it. That's good. And Sharon?
I haven't seen it, but we had another movie, maybe 6-7 years ago that was also focused on Eurovision.
Yeah. To just give you an idea, Mark, to say that I've seen it before. Can you see my shirt?
Oh my God, he wore a costume. I didn't have anything to wear, and Gary came through for me. Thank you. Was it good to watch Eurovision?
I became acquainted with it in the 1970s when my father was stationed in Germany. And at that time, when it came on, they said all the streets in Europe were empty. That's how popular it was. And I guess the most famous group was ABBA that they won the contest.
How did people vote back then? Did they call in with the telephone to vote?
I believe so.
That's amazing.
Now they're texting. And
Yes.
the Douze points, it's not necessarily like a perfect, they give different scores, the judges. And so the 12 is the highest they can give. So they give like 10, 8, and then lower amount. And it's really neat. So basically, what I liked of it, and why as an American, it was so different that whenever they would start the show, it's like, hello, Europe, we're all together. And then you say, how did Israel get included in Europe? And they got included. And my understanding is Israel has now won 4 times the contest.
Yes.
And I think the very first time there was an Arab country that was competing. And I think they shut off the broadcast in that Arab country, not to show that Israel won the contest.
Well, if Israel's winning, I have to believe that there's some judging that's done professionally, because I wouldn't think that the consumers of Europe would consciously vote an Israeli 4 times to win.
Well, the last one who they mentioned, and they had an actress portraying her, I guess, from the back, was Netta. And so she won. And a lot of times people joke and say, it's like the really crazy acts. They've had people dressed almost like Klingons, in the competing. They've had like 6 Russian grandmothers. But the ones, they were really concerned. There were people who were trying to boycott Israel.
Yes.
And here she did the song, and it almost, if you haven't seen like on YouTube, it's almost like she's doing a chicken dance when she's singing. And lo and behold, she did win. And they had reference. So it's like my wife and I, when we're watching the movie, we're seeing all these references to the previous Eurovision song. So like in the bar scene, you have like these little cats, the golden cats that they had. Well, she had, I forget how many that she might have had, the different cats like that in her routine. And there were different songs that they were playing in the background that were previous Israeli winners. That if you didn't know about the Eurovision Song Contest, it was sort of like inside jokes that they had.
Well, I'm glad that we were able to know there was more to it than most of us probably caught, because I've never seen Eurovision except the time we met the woman who sang for us. That's great. That's great. I assumed it was similar to American Idol or The Voice. That's wonderful.
Let me tell you, when you talk about the gay person, they had the one from Austria, Conchita Wurst. And if you can imagine a person with a very dark beard wearing a gown, and he wins as a drag queen. And at that time, they said almost like people were voting, and he, a very good singer, to maybe say something against Russia that was having all these laws against homosexuals. And it was almost like Europe was coming together to say, here, Russia, in your face, we're going to go ahead and we're going to award this to this drag queen. And literally in Austria, when they hosted then the Eurovision Song Contest, and again, if people don't know, the country that wins, they get to host the contest that next year.
Got it. That's why Israel's had it so many
Right.
times.
And so literally Austria, when they were hosting it, they changed, they said the traffic signs where have people crosswalks, they would have like two men as an image or two ladies that they would show instead of whatever they did before, like a man and a woman. They changed it, and they said it was so popular that even after the contest was over, they were going to continue showing that.
Has anybody ever been to Paris recently and felt a strong Arab presence? Paul, I know you're on the phone. I don't know if I can see your face, but your wife is from France. I was amazed at that part there, that there was, hi, Paul, that this chime in, Paul's wife is from France. And I was amazed when I saw the ghetto of Arab neighborhoods that were in this movie showing Paris. Wasn't anything that I have ever seen. Yeah.
Yeah, Mark, there's tons of Arabs in Paris. And, they're very anti-Semitic, I'll tell you that much. It's becoming a problem because there's a lot of anti-Semitism in Paris, but it's mostly coming from the Muslim community, unfortunately. And Catherine's got girlfriends and other people living there. Some of them went to Israel, some came back from Israel. But it's a situation, it's a problem. It really is in Israel.
Yeah, that part. Yeah, I was just amazed that when he was walking through the neighborhood, or everything was the way I'm sure it actually looks like in Paris, and we just kind of forget about ghettos, so to speak, that there are these neighborhoods. I'm sure, Paul, if you've been to Paris, that you just wouldn't walk through if you were Jewish, and I just can't even. I don't know. I don't feel that way. By the way, when I go to Israel.
That's the problem. They keep those neighborhoods really segregated, low class. They don't have a chance to get ahead, and that's one of the big problems because they are treated horribly, and they act because of it. So,
well, I didn't feel, unless I missed something, that there was as much anything anti-Semitic as it was anti-Zionist, anti-Israel. There were a lot of funny lines. I love when the head of the Israeli Mossad, that beautiful blonde girl, I mean, she was gorgeous, and she tries to seduce the Irishman, and he won't have anything to do with her because he won't touch anything that's made in Israel. It was so funny. And then he smuggles the soda stream. There was really a lot of little get Michigas. I just kept seeing things over and over again in this movie that made me realize this was a joke. A lot of fun. Okay. Anybody else or any questions? I have chats here. I'm not looking at any questions. I guess someone else will tell me. Don't mess with the Zohar. How about the awards that were won by Sacha Cohen the other night at the Golden Globes? He's also that kind of comedian where it's very physical humor. And I could see Sacha Cohen having some of his films, which I've watched every one of them. And then I saw him in that Netflix or Apple TV, it was called Spy. And he was so good as a serious actor in Spy, where he plays an Israeli true story who infiltrates Egypt. And it was just great to see him as a serious actor. I believe, and I've taught a number of classes on comedy, that most comedians are better actors than actors because they have to be so fast in their mind. And if you look, there's a lot of comedians who have done serious roles and do a very good job. I was just watching Tina Fey the other night, and I know she's so funny, but she's so beautiful and she can pull anything off and has. There's just a lot of talent in comedians. A lot of talent. Okay. Anybody else? So now you have a homework assignment to go find all of the Austin Power films, all the airplane movies, and a few Mel Brooks movies as well to watch. And that'll probably allow you to have enough time to get your vaccinations and hopefully come out on the other side of this. I'm going for the first time to see my mother after 15 months, and she lives in New York. And I've been vaccinated, as I know many of you have been as well. Every day, I'm given new rules, what I'm supposed to do. So I went and had the COVID test 4 o'clock today. 4:15, I got a text from my sister. You didn't need to have the test if you have the shot, but maybe it'll change tomorrow. So I'm bringing so much paperwork that I'm clean. You know, I'm at my shots, I got the papers, and then I'm going to get there and I'm sure there'll be new rules. And the quarantine part is also very challenging because I want to take my mother grocery shopping, and I don't know if I'm allowed to leave the apartment because it says you'll get a $10,000 ticket if you leave quarantine. But then I just got another text that say, if you have the shots, you don't have to quarantine anymore for 90 days. So very, very confusing time, but hopefully we'll get through it. And
so there are a couple of additional comments in the chat. The movie that somebody referred to, was called Cupcakes. That was about that. We showed that. Brenda, was it like 6 or 7 years ago? Yeah. And that one was, the goal was to come in second because you didn't have to host. It was almost as good as winning, but you didn't have to pay to put on the extravaganza in your own country the next year.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Oy.
And are there any more questions or comments?
I was also trying to remember. Yeah, Rochelle, I was also trying to remember, was it in the movie Cupcakes, or is it someone told me in Israel that when someone from Israel is competing in the finals, the streets are empty in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem. It's more so than on Yom Tov, and they all go home early. Was it in Cupcakes or? Yeah,
I don't remember. I mean, they did portray that in the movie, but I think that was true to form. So.
Anything to make it less populated than even Yom Tov has to be pretty popular. Yeah. When you said that, you had my attention.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is there anything else that anyone wants to share or question Mark about?
Mark, you mentioned about the person that was in another movie or on Apple. In Fauda on Netflix, the person who played Russell's father was also in one of the spy parts, like a leader there. And the thing is how flexible these actors seem to be, speaking multiple languages. As compared to an American program, how they seem so fluid going from one language to the other.
Absolutely. And I think I find most humor when I see one character playing a Arab terrorist in one, and then he's speaking Hebrew in another, because so many of our Jewish people who have come to Israel from Syria and from Yemen and from Iraq, they play the role so well and they speak the language that it's just fabulous to see exactly what you said. My daughter's great. She says, "Oh, remember him? He was in Spy. He was in Fauda." We watch all of this. I'm telling you, I watch anything that comes from Israel because I miss Israel so much. I love to see this one that I just watched called Alice. Just to see people driving on the highway of Tel Aviv, it makes me, feel somewhat connected. I look forward to us all being able to travel. I feel bad for Israel. I'm sure they're really looking forward to tourism to come back. Okay.
And just one more comment that somebody expressed, we've heard this from a few places, an interest in, even once we are all vaccinated and able to gather and continuing to have online films like this. And we're exploring all possibilities, and we will be putting out a survey soon in the next few weeks as the festival concludes. So we hope that as many people as possible will respond to it and let us know preferences, because at the present time, we are not aware of a way to show a movie both in a theater and online. And so that will mean for each movie, we will have to make a decision. This one goes online, this one we're going to put in a theater or an auditorium somewhere. And that'll be, an interesting challenge for us. Well, we need to have the feedback from you on what you enjoy most. Some people really like the idea to watch the movie at their own leisure and come together for a conversation like this, and others enjoy that big screen experience. And probably there are some others who probably are, would like a little of each. But anyway, we will be putting together the survey, and we will really appreciate as much feedback as possible as we begin to plan. And then the next thing I wanted to tell you that while our festival has traditionally been in September, we broke the mold. We broke it into two parts. We did August, and now we've done this little winter venture, mostly February. And we think we're going to stay in the winter. And we think that the next time we really pull together a full festival will be late February, early March of 2022. So while you'll hear from us on a film here and a film there, the next main festival will be about roughly a year from now.
I have a question. Will there be any to vote like we usually do to rate the different things we've seen? Will we be sent anything to do that?
Yeah, we can do that. I think we sent some things. We sent some out in the first half, and we didn't get a whole lot of responses. Not enough really to say this was the winner of the festival. Not like not like when it was live. But yes, we can rate the films and see what happens. But if we're only getting a handful, it's not as meaningful. We are very much interested in the feedback for the format, but we also want to know what you thought of the movies. So we'll ask.
Yeah, Rochelle, I just want to say that I find that the talkbacks have been more successful this time in both, the September one and this one than in the movie house, because people are going to work and they have to get up early, so they start going out. They disturb the ones who are staying. People come from the other movie theater next door. And here we had a great turnout, and I think that's very successful this way.
I think that the talkbacks have been incredibly successful, yes. The people come to them and are engaged and have their questions and want to be here, as opposed to in the theater, people are like peeling off every second. And I understand it. I want to go home too, or I've been sitting for 2 hours and need the restroom also. So yeah, I agree.
Lots of good ideas. Sharon is almost done with my sweater, so she's done a terrific job, and I think it's about time I come over for a fitting. Why don't you hold it up so I can see how we're doing? Look at this. Unbelievable. Did I take enough time? Rochelle, I got the left sleeve done.
Let's see that. Come on, show us. I missed that.
Look at this. This is beautiful.
Wow.
Oh, God. Whoever's getting that is very lucky.
Very.
Very lucky. Okay, well, if that's everybody's evening, I'm happy I was able to share it. And again, let's us all continue to be vigilant, happy, and look forward to being together in person very soon. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Good night, everyone.
My pleasure. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Good night.
My pleasure.